Michelle Graves, your host on The Power of Money, and I'm honored to have you as a part of my world in this coming segment. With The Power of Money, as you know, we are interested in three things. First, that you get the necessary education so that you and your family will have the information to do well in these difficult times. The second thing I'm interested in is for you to be empowered to prosper. I want only the best for you, but you can't get that if you don't have the education and then the drive to make it happen. And the final thing, and perhaps the most important thing, is that you be energized. Because life is more than a journey. Life is about living. And so I want you to learn these things and to be empowered and encouraged and energized. I'm Michelle Graves. Now here we go.
And here we go. I'm Michelle Graves, and welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money. And again, as always, for the many, many years I've been on television, I am honored, privileged, and delighted to bring to you today another extraordinary guest to talk about some things that you probably want to know but don't know how to ask, or may not even know that you didn't know it, because that gray zone gets really muddy. But in lieu of my commitment to empower and educate you so that you can be energized, my guest today is a gentleman that I have known for years, yes. In fact, decades. Telling my age. And I have always, yours too, I have always found him to be an exceptional individual. He is in the funeral industry. Yes, you are heading in that direction. And he is a licensed family service advisor. Licensed, and we'll talk about that as we get into the meat of the show today. But we're going to talk about all those many, many questions that you have about funerals, about how to plan properly for funerals so that you don't have sticker shock or find yourself doing a GoFundMe page. Yeah, that's the newest thing. And so we're going to address those things so that, again, you can begin to take the necessary steps today to alter your decision making and to plan properly and maturely for the inevitable. Because just like it's inevitable that you will be born, it is also inevitable that you are going to leave this earth. And so we want to make sure that as a part of your planning that you address these issues, and now you don't have to continue to email, text me, and call me, and Facebook me and messenger me, because I'm going to answer all those questions through the professional, which is what I do. So Robb is my guest for the next hour. Sit down, take a piece of paper, or if you would like, after this program airs in the various markets that we air in, you can always go and look at this on YouTube. Please, powerful venue. You can repeat it as much as you want and get the information you live. So hello there, my friend.
Good morning.
To you. So glad to have you at the station and on the set.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I am too. Where do we want to begin?
Well, you know, I really love what you're doing. I love what you represent most of all, because you represent change. And that's so important. And people have to be motivated to change.
They do.
You know, some of the things that I've dealt with over the years in different industries and things that I've been in, it's always been a curiosity in my mind. How can I help a person see that they can benefit from services like the service that I have to offer? And what I find, Michelle, is that there's a mindset that people have that is just so messed up in our country today. And everybody's got this fixed mindset, and it's not a growth mindset. Because, you know, and that sort of transcends beyond just funeral and cemetery. It goes into, you know, people's spending habits and all the money markets and why people don't do what they should do.
And why they're broke.
Why they're broke. There's a lot of reasons behind it. But you said something in the introduction of what you do and why we're here. It's to help people find that motivation that they need. Something they need a spark that will bring about a change in what we're doing. There's a gentleman who loves the statement statement, and I love it too. You might pick it up and use it. So if you do,
Okay.
I won't
want
hold
credit?
it against you.
Okay,
Well, just a
okay.
little bit. But he says that the biggest room in this room and the biggest room that there is in our country is room for what? Improvement.
Totally get it.
Isn't that something?
That's good.
That's right. So Joe
That's good.
Tate, that's yours, buddy. You got it.
Okay, I got it.
There's always room for improvement. You know, but what we have to do is sort of be honest with ourselves, change and look at our mindset and find out where the change really should come from. Because people today, I think what we're looking at is people who are in a place that they're just saying, as long as I'm doing what's good enough, I'm okay. They sort of settle.
Okay,
Which
so
is why people don't do, I think, what they could and should do.
Okay.
Because they're settling.
okay, and they're settling because they don't think that they can do better.
No
Is that
doubt.
possible?
Well, I think the cost of what it costs to do better is something they don't value enough of. You know, so there's slogans, I think, that have been said, and statements, and just things that people have carried into their adult life that help to shape them. You know, when I was growing up, I thought it was real neat that somebody said, well, you know, what you don't know won't hurt you. Sounds pretty good when you're about 12, 13, or 14.
Yeah, it does sound good until it becomes a part of your thought process.
Right. Then you realize that you don't
Ignorance
know.
is not bliss.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right. You
So
don't know what you don't know.
So you have to find out some things. Then I've come to a realization, which brings me sort of closer to why I'm doing what I'm doing now, is that, you know, the experience factor, you start looking at things all around you, your family structure and the neighbors, and why people are the way they are, why I am the way I am, why I think the way I think, and just to stop to think about the experience. They say experience is the best teacher.
Oh, it's a brutal taskmaster.
It is.
That's a hard way to learn about life.
It is. But you know what's best about experience, being a teacher? Let it be somebody else's experience.
That you can look on.
Right, look on and learn from.
Right.
We don't need to have all the experiences and fail first.
Yes, I totally get that. So what is involved in the task of funeral and cemetery purchase and selection? Because again, that's a process that requires a level of awareness.
It does.
And application, because after this show, they will be aware. But the challenge is going to be, okay, he told us, now how do we do it? So again, for those of you watching, this is not an intellectual conversation. I don't do that. This is about getting the necessary information, tools, and then know who you can go to, because he's the best. I wouldn't put him on here otherwise. And beginning to redirect your behavior. And that's tough,
It is.
but you can do it
It is.
so that you can bring about change in your family. Okay, death does not have to be the end. It's tough enough. But when you don't have things in order, it reaches a level of chaos and sorrow that is just unspeakable. It's unspeakable. So what is your recommendation?
Well, I would think that the most important thing that people need to look at that will help them evaluate themselves where they are on today is sort of find their lack. You know, really be honest with yourself and to identify the things that you don't know and would like to know more about. Just try to have more of an open mindset. I think we get triggers all throughout our lives about things, and because when I sit down with people, Michelle, and or let's say I'm calling someone, I haven't talked to them in a while. They're in our database. I know I have to give them a phone call just to see, are you ready to talk about this now, or you in a place that you can think about it? And some of the responses I get is, well, no, I hadn't thought about that, and so I don't think I'll be ready to do anything right now. I'm just not thinking about it. And
Excuse me?
There's so much resistance.
Help, no, come on now.
Yes.
You
That's
call
what
a
they say.
person and they tell you that they're still not ready
Still not ready. I mean, and it's
when do you become ready when it comes to something as final as death?
Right. And you know what? There's some triggers to that.
Okay.
There's some triggers to that. And I think what really helps people is just the dispensation of time.
Okay.
There are 5 different, we call them the 5 Ds in advanced planning that trigger people throughout their lives.
Okay.
And the most important one that happens pretty regular is the decade of time. People celebrate what? They celebrate their 20th. They love the 20th birthday party. Yippee. 30, 40, 50. Each age brings on another mindset, another group of things to look at for themselves.
Okay.
And so I think that people are really triggered by those, and they do stop and think about their mortality. Do
they?
I think people do, and they'll look at family members and they'll see, wow, death has occurred by a family member or a friend or someone close to them, and they have to ask themselves, who's going to take care of, what if that was me? Who's going to take care of this for me?
Right.
They do have a moment of time that they think about it, and they have to really value the fact that time is moving on. Their health is declining. They're not able to get out like the guys. We're not able to get out and play basketball with the young boys the way we used to. They get down the court a little faster than we do.
I would think so.
Yes, at the end of that day, you're home thinking about, wow, I'm getting a little older.
Yeah.
So, but guys, it happens. So there are different triggers, I think, that help people to want to get a grip on it, but they just don't do it unless they really start not being it's sort of selfish. Get out of selfishness and realize who you're doing this for.
Because truly, this whole process is about making it easier for those that you leave behind.
Absolutely.
Is that not a fair statement?
That is.
Now, I've heard it said,
and
it's very offensive to me, and it takes a lot to offend me, but this offends me, which is, well, I don't care what they do with my body. They can cremate it, they can pitch it, and I'm like, no, that's not the way the legal system works.
Right. You cannot do that.
You cannot pitch anybody's corpse.
Right.
Or well, I'll donate it. Well, those things have to be set in place.
Yeah, it has to be qualified.
They don't want your body in all cases.
Right.
Everything is, medical schools are saying, we've got a ton of bodies.
Yes, absolutely.
And we don't necessarily want your body. And so unless that's all been cleared. So these are some of the things. Do you think that divorce is a trigger?
I do, because a person is really, in the divorce situation, is really looking at the fact that here I am now separating myself from the person who I thought would really be that anchor for me and take care of things for me as I would for them. And to say it easily, now I've got to think back to who I would look at now, because my relationship has changed. Who would take care, who can I trust? Who would work in my behalf as I would work for me, as I thought this other person would, but they're not anymore. And not so much as divorce. Let me step back a little bit and say separation, the legal separation.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, that is missed. If a person is in I don't want to say nasty, that's not the best word for our viewing, a difficult relationship. And they have a legal separation. One of the things that they should do, which an attorney doing good business representing his client or his or her clients should say that you want to establish the right of disposition, have things in order so your business, if something were to happen yesterday, who would step in and take care of your business for you today and know what's going on, have a right of disposition. It's not always the brother or the sister or the oldest person in the family too that earns that right to be able to be the person that would take care of a disposition for someone. That needs to be appointed by you.
That's good to know.
It is. It's food for thought, isn't it?
That's beyond food for thought. So you're saying that they're not divorced, they're in the gray zone, which is heading in that direction. But again, because of their lack of information, They don't know this is necessary.
They're not thinking about it. And if something were to happen while they're in that process,
Yes.
then that person who you're at odds with, they
Is
still
now
have all
going
the
to-
right and responsibility
my
to be able to
goodness.
do
Whatever they want.
they think they need to do for you.
Well, I don't want to think about that.
Right.
Else it wouldn't be in for
hello,
boys.
listening audience.
Hello.
You hope that's not you. But those are some of the other things really to stop and look at, to really, figure that I have to take care of me. It's me time now. You have to look at the security of taking care of oneself. The thing I think that really stands out that I really love, I love to see a family who they come and they sit down and we're making the final arrangements. Whether I'm not a funeral director, okay.
Great.
So I would meet with a family pretty much on the cemetery side after death has occurred to help them establish what they may already own, or to establish their final resting place.
Okay.
And when I'm sitting with families who already have things arranged, and that family member walks in, the son, the daughter, and the arrangements have already been made, there's a sigh of relief when they walk in the room that they know they're only going to be there a few minutes. They're still grieving over the loss of their loved one, and the planning has already been done.
But their stuff is in order.
It's in order.
That's what I was so blessed about with my mother. And I appreciate the care that your particular establishment, Spring Grove Cemetery, Funeral and Cemetery, did. Everything is click, 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 click.
Right.
It's in order.
It's in order.
And that's a sigh of relief for me, because I don't have to worry about anybody's interpretation of what she wanted after the fact, or even the monetary.
Absolutely.
That's all taken care of as well.
Yes.
And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that, and it was sticky because, again, people don't believe that this is necessary, or that there's a timepiece, which is if you're alive today, you need to have this done, because you don't control the air you breathe.
And that's so true.
I mean, a higher power controls the air you breathe.
Right.
And things happen, and they happen just like that.
And let me share something with you. I really do believe that a person's mental state and their health can truly be negatively affected by carrying and wearing and bearing so much grief.
Ooh.
Okay, people call it stress. It's grief.
It is grief.
Let's give it the real name. Let's get back to what it is. People are grieving. They're grieving because they lost their job. They're grieving because they didn't get the raise. They're grieving because their family pet passed. They're grieving for so many reasons. People have been grieving real strong for the last 10 years with the downsizing of the market, the economy.
2008 was
we're
a
all
horrible
grieving.
thing.
We are grieving because of things that are not happening. And
Yeah.
we're grieving with our government. We're grieving behind the police. We're grieving behind so much that's going on. The violence in the world. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We are grieving. So do you really know that you can change that grief structure and solidify your family a little better if you took care of your personal business, keep your family together, so that that one person that you could think about in your family will really be affected the most? You could help that one person in your family.
I think you bring up such a powerful point, Mr. Robb, and I say this because I've continued to say over and over and over and over again, because I'm astute on world affairs. I've lived overseas, China, everywhere. And I still say, take care of your personal business.
Absolutely.
Not the macro model, the micro model, you and your family, starting with you. If you're the head of that household, you must lead. And if you're not willing to lead, you have nothing to say about outcomes, because the family unit is, in my opinion, the most precious and powerful unit that we have as humans. The ability to connect, communicate, and to love. And that this act of taking care of your funeral ahead of time, in my opinion, is the ultimate act of love.
it's the model that really, you know, it has to be set out before you. You have to see it, or someone has to testify. They have to say it was, as you've already said, you know, for me, the impact was so uplifting just to know that things were taken care of. So for someone to hear you say that, they would have to be able to say for themselves, you know, that's what I want for me. That's what I want for my husband or my wife. Lord, I wouldn't want my wife to have to go through that, so I'm going to take care of it ahead of time, so she didn't have to go through that.
Yes.
You know, vice
versa. I just
versa.
think that's so powerful.
You know.
But let's talk about some misconceptions and unknown facts. I'm going
Okay.
to do a question and answer for you
All
here. Let's
righty.
start with this one.
All righty.
This is based upon, again, people emailing me.
Oh, you get emails.
God, I tell them I'm not an expert on this stuff. Okay, my mom and dad got their insurance years ago. They are fine.
Oh, I heard that one.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's listen to the main focus part of that was they got their insurance years ago. Well, they got their insurance years ago for the cost of covering their funeral services, and years ago, the inflation, well, what you remember when gas was maybe $1 a gallon?
I remember when it was 50 cents, but now I'm really telling my
Oh,
age.
see, I didn't take you there.
I know.
But the cost for funeral and cemetery planning at that time, probably $4,000 or $5,000 insurance policies that people were.
the little bitty policies.
So there's a whole lot of those out there that that the family member, mom and dad, probably hang their hat on and say, I've got insurance coverage. Or, in addition to that, they'll think that, okay, how much does it cost for the funeral nowadays? And the average funeral cost could be $4,000 to $6,000. It could be $10,000, depending on what you spend. Well, that's all that they have. So what happens after the funeral and the casket is sitting there, the service is over? They need cemetery, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Where are you going to take it? What?
Speaking of which, would you address that? Please, I've said this over the years. The funeral home is not the cemetery.
Absolutely.
Would you go into some depth on that?
And you know, that's such a mistaken and it's one of those slogans, one of those statements that people say, "Oh, I've got insurance; it'll take care of everything." Well, that's not the case. Those are two separate entities. There are many funeral homes that they're not blanket full service funeral and cemetery entities. They're funeral home only. So the service that you get from that funeral home only takes care of the disposition of that body, having that person picked up and you know, taken care
Services
of,
and stuff.
yeah, the embalming, all the things that are necessary there. But then after that, just for my company that I work with, which is Spring Grove, yeah, there's the funeral side, but then the cemetery side is another cost, another level of service that has to be provided for, and you cannot do that on a payment plan.
Oh, would you? No payment plan,
No
folks.
payment plans. Once you need the service,
Give me your money.
Yes, it's not like the Wimpy. You can't get a hamburger and pay you a hamburger today, and I'll gladly pay you Tuesday.
Yes,
if you just bury someone. I think we've had people that tried that once, and I think they've probably been the rule for somebody. And but I think that has happened in the past, and they didn't get the funds for the service. They never got paid.
And that the cemetery, that would include the opening and the closing of the grave,
Yes.
the little headstone, that would include the purchasing of the plot.
Right, absolutely. So what you're gonna look
Okay.
at, you're gonna have just a few things that you would need. There's above ground and below ground.
Okay.
With whether it's cremation or traditional burials nowadays, and we could talk about that. So if it is below ground, which is traditionally what people have done over the years, then of course the space, whatever the space is, and that's number one. You have to have the space, and in most cemeteries, not all, a vault is required that holds that casket, that protects it from the minimalization of water, moisture, things like that, and the weight of the dirt around it. A vault is a great recommendation if you're establishing a cemetery that requires a vault. That's a good thing. Ground stays level and all of that. But the land itself, the vault, and then the opening and closing, the service work for them to actually prepare, open the grave, make sure that it's engineered properly so that it's not over to the left and to the right and encroaching on someone else. But those things are necessary. And the recording fees are also included in all of the opening and closing as well.
You record that?
Well, the recording, date, time, specific
I got it.
information that goes on into the cemetery records, which, by the way, also is what people do try to reference. You can't really go to a funeral home that has changed names 2, 3, 4, 5 different times and go back and find records necessarily on a family member. But what is pretty permanent is that final resting place of a person.
Cemetery.
So they do. People
That's
are
good
used to
know.
going to the cemetery
That is good. I didn't know that.
for recorded
That's
information.
Good to know.
And then with that, we would go back and forth.
Okay.
So then, as you said, the memorialization. Memorialization is key.
Which would be your marker.
The marker is the flat, the flat marker, or the upright monument.
Okay. And now, what about mausoleums? Because those are becoming more and more popular.
Yeah, there are some people.
Really?
They are, and they're beautiful. It's a beautiful structure. It's a beautiful thought that there's a building that is an above ground setup. And I've heard people say, well, I just don't want to be in the ground with all those bugs. Never heard anybody come back and tell me what it's like, but anyway, that's what they say. They don't like bugs, right?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
But I think the bright side of the mausoleum is it allows a structure, summer, winter, spring, or fall, that a person is able to walk up, get out of their car, walk into on a ground level, not be walking into a cemetery ground and trying to look 100 feet back and say, oh, there is way over there. That's where I have to go, and the ground's muddy, different things like that. So the convenience factor. So the entire body is in the mausoleum, or just the cremains? Well, actually both.
Okay.
I
didn't know that. The entire body is in a mausoleum.
It's in a mausoleum. Well, and that's the way it was. It's sort of the crypt, the tomb.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's the term. It's a crypt. And that's the way it was back in ancient days.
Okay. So they said above the ground, because I'm thinking of New Orleans. One of the things that really made me very unhappy about New Orleans was that everybody's bodies are on top of the dirt, because you can't bury them because of the water issue. Right. So everybody sits there, and that was just so different. But that is a mausoleum. Okay, that concept.
And sometimes it's a totally enclosed building.
Okay.
And sometimes the mausoleum may be open to the outside wall.
Okay.
And then the insertion of the burial takes place right on the outside. But the memorialization is there, so that means that already has its own vault. You don't need a vault because that chamber itself is its own vault.
And is that like air sealed or something like that?
There is air sealed bags also that the casket would actually go into. There's a permaseal structure that bag goes into, and it goes on into its chamber that does.
This is absolutely. So what does all this cost?
Well, your actual cost, again, it's going to depend on how elaborate you want. It's sort of back to real estate 101 as far as the land goes, because there are areas where each section is maybe had a little bit more money spent in developing that area. So they try to get more cost back in the area that has a lake around it, or that has other structures around it, that money has been put into place there, or it has columbariums or other structures. Now, columbarium may be another word that people are not as familiar with also.
Okay, well, tell our viewers what that is.
The columbarium is actually related to the cremation placement.
Okay.
It could be in a mausoleum, or it could be a structure of its own.
It just has cremains. Okay.
And most of the cremated niches that are in, what's what we call them, the niche that are in the columbarium or the mausoleum, they're going to provide for 2 placements. At least they are at Spring Grove. And their own particular urn. There's a bronze urn that will allow for the space and planning of the cremated remains.
Okay.
And then the memorialization of the identification is already included in that price as well. So it's somewhat reasonable. I would say you could start almost at $2,500 for, that's the placement of two, so that's about $1,300
yeah, that's
for.
very affordable.
Yeah, and it is. You know, then that doesn't include the opening and closing fee, but then that's another, you know, something happens.
Well, I do want to intercept and interrupt and just say to my viewers, if I could get the close-up here, it's really important that you understand that the whole process of death is grievous, and it has to be paid for. I continue to tell people that the days where you were not going to pay for a funeral are over. These are companies that are in business to handle bodies, and it is a good service. It's highly regulated. Licensing and all of these things are in place because it is a business. And it may offend some of you when you think about your loving funeral director or a mortician, but these are business people and they have to make a profit. So these fees and things that we're talking about, and I'm speaking to you as the money lady, but I'm also speaking to you having gone to funerals and seen this for years and years and years. They have to make profit. If you don't understand what that concept means, then just think about you going to work and not getting paid. Think about that on a practical level, or think about providing a service for which you're not paid for. And I only say this because as much as you may plead with the funeral director to please, we can't afford this, or we don't know what we're gonna do. This is why Mr. Robb is on my show now, because that is the wrong time to have a conversation about how you're gonna pay for this and how family members are going to pay for this. That's all unnecessary. It's all unnecessary. Too much drama. Too much. So, switching back to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've talked about the traditional and the cremation and the mausoleum or columbarium for the cremains, and the costs do vary.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And let me go back to something you said, because let me tell you what's happening. What's happening is, as we mentioned, one of the 5 Ds that happen, there are young people who, and I'll say young, who are leaving here much too soon. They're in their 30s, they're in their 40s, they're just beginning to live, and some of them are sick. Some of them get diseases that, or diagnoses, I should say, that don't allow them, you know, the time that you and I have had, the other years in their lives, and family members are, the parents end up having to foot the bills of so many of the young people that, you know, an unexpected, untimely death. But I like to shift also to the parents who don't have enough of the coverage, and who's looking out for the parents. You know, that self-centered mindset with that 20, 30-year-old, they're just, it's me time, it's acquire, accumulate. That's the mindset of a 20, 30-year-old. They're in accumulation
thinking
phase.
About anything else. But
and then, you know, something happens to mom or dad, and then they find out they need another $5,000 from somewhere because they only have this $5,000 funeral policy. There's an insurance policy. Well, I want to encourage people to have a conversation with their family members, the oldest person in their family, whoever the matriarch is in their family, and try to find out where they are. And it's a tough conversation to have.
It is a tough conversation.
But if they find out what the lack and what the need is, I think it's a lot better that the family get together and establish a monthly payment, as you said, that will help pay for the services for mom and dad, whatever that difference is, and have that provided for, as opposed to waiting till the day of passing, and you find out what you need, and then everybody's got to dig and come up with the money.
And they're mad.
And they're mad.
They're mad because it's like, what? And you're like, yeah, life is something, isn't it?
Right. And then you're saying GoFundMe. Well, you put a GoFundMe page out for a 70-year-old. People are going to respond because of you.
Right.
I don't think they're going to know who your 70-year-old father or mother is. All of their family and friends, they are not on computer and GoFundMe supporters. So there's so much devastation that goes back to the grief, so much devastation that goes on because of the lack of planning, because of the lack of foresight, that people just need to stop and really consider trying to have that conversation with their father, mother, sister, brother, the oldest person in the family. Because most of our structure, people say that, well, it's the oldest person that's going to take care of this, or this one has the power of attorney. So the person with the power of attorney, they can handle it.
Right.
They appointed them. They didn't ask me to be the power of attorney, so you handle it.
Okay.
There's that
But people are just amazing. But on that subject of insurance, I'd like to shift.
Okay.
And let's talk about pre-planning, because this is where I have a lot of people asking questions.
Alrighty.
And I'm going to go back to just some of the things that we want to deal with in pre-planning. One of the things that you have said here is recognize you are pre-planning for the benefit of the person who is reaffirming your arrangement.
That is so important, why you're doing what you're doing. Let me say it this way. Let's go back to the gentleman or the woman, the person who said, "Oh, I don't care, just throw me in the backyard.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Just wrap me up. Yeah, throw me in the backyard."
Yeah.
What we find is that at some point in time, someone's going to come across a family or friend member, and they're going to ask, "How's Uncle Bud?" Uncle Bud passed. Oh, well, I didn't know Uncle Bud passed. I didn't hear about it. I didn't have his services. Now, they're not going to tell he's in the backyard. They're going to say he probably cremated. Well, who knows? Whatever the situation was, but they don't talk about it. There's a gathering that's going to take place somewhere, and a person, that son, that daughter, the nephew or niece of Uncle Bud, they're going to be seeing so many people throughout the next few years in their life and going to ask that question, "I haven't seen Uncle Bud." They're going to have to answer that question so many times and bring up that grief every time the question's asked. So that's another reason why to pre-plan, so that there's a formal gathering of the life history and the life celebration of that person, and you could have a notification of everyone that person has probably worked with, where they work, people they went to school with, some things that will help the family in their grieving. Because what happens at those gatherings and funeral services is that, we can get rather loud. We're just so glad to see one another. You've got some things that's going on, and you hear people talk about, "Man, I remember Bud. I remember the time we were out fishing," and you hear the fishing stories, and the children are listening to the stories, and what a great Uncle Bud it was, or something that he did to help someone. He gave somebody some money, he did something for someone, and helped them out of a terrible time. You hear about things about the person that really helps you to feel so much better about their life.
Right.
And it's encouraging to each person to want to do more and do better and take up some of those good traits that they heard about Uncle Bud.
Right.
Uncle Bud did some really nice things.
Right.
The neighborhood may talk about Uncle Bud because they saw one side of it.
Right, but they didn't know the other side.
They didn't know the other side.
So pre-planning addresses important. That issue of family
loss. It really does. It does. It does. And what we really like to make sure that there's some closure.
Okay.
Closure is very important in establishing the plan. You have to qualify for the funeral planning too, and that's something that I think is pretty paramount. You want to do this planning when you're in have a reasonable portion of good health and a good frame of mind. You know what you're doing. You don't want to wait till you have a diagnosis.
Oh,
And that's the worst time that I think a person could really sit down and try to talk about these things by themselves, with their spouse, or with any of their family members. This is something to do and be proactive about doing. And realize that for the funeral planning, let's go specific, because I think what you want to get to, what the listening audience really needs to hear, is that you can establish the cost for the funeral service. Let's throw a number out. Let's say $6,000.
okay.
And you can have a policy that will be a funeral policy that is, excuse me, guaranteed services. You establish a service, answer your questions, give the vital statistic information based on your age, based on your health conditions. Today, everything's good, clean. You establish a policy. Let's say it's a 3-year or 5-year policy term of time that will pay it totally off. However, it's guaranteed that in the event, before that policy is paid off, if death were to occur, it would pay in full, pay those services in full.
That's the key thing.
That's the key. Have coverage before you need it.
Have coverage, and that should you be in the midst of paying it off and die,
Right.
your plan is guaranteed.
It's guaranteed.
That is major.
It really is. It really is.
I'm telling you.
And that goes back to the family members that can determine what that lack, that void for mom or dad or something. Well, let's just get these items here and we'll get those paid for. If they can still qualify, they're not, you know, sick and terminal, anything like that, then we can establish that for them and get that.
So pre-planning will guarantee
It will guarantee
your cost of services.
Cost of
now,
services.
I want you all to write this down because this is important. Pre-planning will guarantee at today's prices your cost of services. You can sit down with an advisor and itemize and identify what you want and what you don't want in a thoughtful way. And this is 100% guaranteed after underwriting.
It is. Now,
that is amazing.
And listen to this. What is so amazing to me, I compliment the family on something that mom and dad did when they come in there and they come in and they sit down and they share with me that they took care of the pre-planning. Back to the example where a person bought insurance 30 years ago. Well, this person pre-planned their funeral services 30 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so the services, the monies that went in to cover that funeral policy is something that beats inflation for you, because it's money that's set aside just for funeral purposes.
Okay.
It's going to be backed by an annuity and it grows over time. So as the money market changes and the costs of goods and services go up, your money has already been paid that day and time, and it grows
guaranteed.
with the inflation.
That
so
is amazing.
What's needed 30 years from now, your money has also grown 30 years of growth, as well as the inflation has increased by 30 years, but it balances out and you may even get a check back.
Now that's nice.
But it was paid for 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's taken care of.
Now, one of the questions is, what is covered in pre-planning? What are some of the things that are covered in pre-planning?
Well, the pre-planning, if we're going to talk about funeral first, the pre-planning cost in the funeral is the basic need.
Okay.
There's an administrative fee that sort of is a blanket cost that covers the funeral director, the funeral home, the building structure, things like that, all the people that are involved in doing the administrative work. But then there's the personal needs that the family would want to recognize that exist, and that's the embalming for the individual, picking up the person from wherever they passed that and bringing them, whether it's from the coroner's office or whether it's from their home, bringing them to the funeral home.
Okay.
So you've got that. You've got body prep, which is the hair, the nails, the grooming of the person, the washing and cleaning, bathing, and making sure that before the person is brought before the general public in a service that they're well cared for. And so that's another part of one of the services that need to be paid for. Then there's also the transportation part of getting to the service, where the service is going to be held. In many cases, it's some churches, or it could be it's somewhere other than the funeral home, no doubt. So those are some of the things that are involved there, in addition to the selection of the casket.
And that's always a biggie, the selection of the casket.
Well, that's what all people really think about. Well, I'm going to get my funeral paid for. All I have to do is pick a casket, right?
It's a little bit more to it than that.
It is. But that's one of the selections that a person has to make. Then some of the other things that we talked about are pretty blanket coverage things. We have to have the administrative fees. If there's going to be a viewing, there has to be embalming, and they have to have transportation. Some of the other things are must. But then there are third-party items that we always talk about that we can't plan for, because third-party items are things that are controlled by outside of us, like taxes, flowers, whatever the cost for things are that we don't provide, but still a part of the need for that service for the individual.
And your repast or your reception.
Absolutely.
For the family afterwards, that costs money too.
So you can set those aside and put those into the funeral policy.
Okay.
Or family says, well, I don't want to do that. I just want to do the bare bones. Let's get the service paid out. And I'll work with another establishment, my church or my family. We'll take care of that.
To make sure all that's in place.
Yes.
Although, from my own experience, I think you'd be better off to just get it all priced out and put in a policy.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's my feeling. Just get it done and be done with it.
Yes.
Because grieving a death is the worst time to try to work with anybody.
Yes.
Flowers.
Yes.
Silk flowers, fresh flowers, roses, wet fragrance, wet color. I mean, that's a lot.
Those are some decisions that are really hard to deal with. And you know, that brings me back to the opening statement we were talking about the mindset of people, why they do what they do and why don't they.
Yes.
There's a television show, The Have and the Have-Nots. I like the name of that.
You heard about that? It's on the Oprah. Yes. Right.
You know, when you really think about the economics of people today, we can talk about the mindset of those who have, and it's probably easier to talk about those that have not.
Okay.
Because the reality is, the people that have the least need it the most.
But isn't that always the way it is?
Isn't that something?
And I'm not prepared, without people throwing sticks and stones and rocks at me, to say that it's not supposed to be that way, but perhaps in the mindset that says I have nothing, therefore I do nothing, you wind up with nothing.
Somebody's got to step in and make that change.
Somebody has got to say, that's not me.
Well, that's where the question is. Where are you, whoever's listening to this message?
Yeah.
Are you going to be the one?
Say that to the camera. Don't say it to me.
Hello.
Say hello.
Are you the one who's going to be the catalyst in your family and bring that question to real life? Are you going to be the one who's going to ask, what shall we do? We have a situation here. If we do nothing, the result is sort of evident that it's not the best. But if you can plan ahead, planning ahead, there's no substitution for planning or for preservation. There's no substitution for being prepared. And that's everything in life. You know, we want to be able to just recognize that things that are coming our way whether we like it or not. You know, as Michelle has said, that we can't sidestep this event. This event is going to happen in all of our lives, and it's just better that we plan for it than for it to happen. And you know, we end up in a situation wishing we could do something and really don't know what to do. So in this situation, it's better to have it and don't need it than to need it and don't have it.
And don't have it. And again, how affordable is this type of pre-planning? What does it cost? And what is involved? How do they get in contact with you?
Well, I can be reaching, and I have a wealth of knowledge that
you do.
that have come from
I
many
trust
areas.
You. I
many
trust
areas.
You.
I've been working in family service businesses. Real estate was the the eye opener for me to help
Yes.
people to do things that they didn't really think that they could do. They just really didn't know that they could prepare themselves, and sometimes that's what it took, preparing and planning to buy their home. And they were buying homes that didn't think they could. Everybody said they couldn't.
I
We helped
remember
them to
the
do that.
days.
Yes, well, you were on the other side of a whole lot of those, helping people
yes,
getting
indeed,
those
I
checks.
was.
Here's
Oh,
a
yes,
check.
I was.
See you at the closing table.
Yes,
You know.
I was committed to putting people in homes
You helped a
and
lot of
owned
people.
my own mortgage bank for
Yes,
many years.
Helped a lot of people.
Yes, I did.
But to help people do what they don't know how to do, it's a joy. It's a great fulfillment. People ask me, why do I do what I do, even in the funeral business?
Yes.
It's hard. But the reality is, you don't know what you don't know until you ask somebody. So the point that we want to do here today is just encourage the family members to sit down and have this conversation and discussion, because
Right.
the cost of what it takes, and if you can start on it today, outweighs the impact and the grief that would happen later if you just wait for that day to come.
So I want to ask a question, okay, in the remaining time we have. I would like to know, how affordable is this process?
Well,
and when I say affordability, it's interpretive, because one man's money is not enough for another man. But what would you say is average?
Okay, let's go with cemetery.
Okay.
Cemetery average cost, you have the spaces we mentioned, the vault, the opening and closing and memorialization. If you were to think of roughly $4,000
for the cemetery,
that's a good base price.
Okay. And with the cemetery, you can do monthly installments.
Yeah, you could do monthly installments
before death.
Absolutely.
Because after death, it's cash, credit card, or a check that's cleared the bank.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Okay?
Right.
That's matter of fact. That's one aspect. Now, flipping over to your side of the fence.
So then that is something that I would do and help a person establish that. And you can get any part of that. You can start where you want to start. You don't have to have it all.
Okay.
Get the space so that your family heritage, which is the key word, the family heritage can be together. There's nothing better than to be able to go to one cemetery and you've got many family members that are there that you want to pay respects to, and the grandkids and the great-grands, those are the ones that are coming. They want to know about this person, that one, or the other.
And they should.
Yeah, and you take them around and you're able to go to one place and talk about this person, that one, and the other. So start with the land only if you need to. But that costs about $4,000 there.
On the cemeteries.
But on the funeral side, if the funeral based on age and the health conditions, if you looked at a cost, if you did I just helped a lady she needed about an $8,000 policy for what she needed.
How old was she?
She was 83.
Okay, she's 83.
83 years old.
Okay.
And she was able to establish a policy. As a matter of fact, the unique part about this is that she thought that a 5-year term was going to be something that would work for her. But then the 5-year term, based on her condition and things, that it wasn't exactly what she wanted. I wrote the policy, got it into the company, and in 2 days she called and said, that's a little higher than I think I need to have it. Can you redo the policy for me? So I redid the policy for her and stretched it out to a 10-year.
Okay, a 10-year term.
So she got a 10-year term policy and made it affordable for her. And so I think even in the 10-year, it was a little bit over $100
a month. Are you serious?
On a 10-year
that
term.
Cheap?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say cheap. Let me use a proper financial term.
Right.
That
Reasonable.
affordable?
Yeah, it's affordable.
That affordable? $100 a month
it's over
for an 83-year-old woman to get insurance.
Get a funeral policy.
Exactly.
It was about that. Yes.
That's nothing. She's lived
I think that's
83
right.
years. With nothing, and now she has an opportunity. Give your phone number, because we've run out of time.
Oh,
yes,
you
we
can
have.
call me, and I'll be more than happy to help you. My phone number is 513. That's the area code. The number is 853-6804.
Say that again.
And it's 513-853-6804. And that's the number to Derek Robb at the Spring Grove Cemetery and Spring Grove Funeral Homes in Tri-County. I do service the whole Tri-County area,
Okay.
northern Cincinnati. It doesn't make a difference. You call me, I'll help you wherever you are, just to help you get some answers to your questions.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because this show does air in other markets that are
Absolutely.
outside of yours, but you
Yeah,
can
not a
still,
problem.
they can still call you
Absolutely.
and get help.
Absolutely.
Well,
we can.
folks, I promised you I would just bring the best in this area.
Hope
So
we've
you
helped
can
somebody.
stop messaging me, okay, and stop emailing me, because he's a professional. I do insurance, no question about it. I've done it for 40-something years, life. But he is in a specialty area that you want to make sure you have under your belt if you've not considered it. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you all watching the
Thank you,
show.
Michelle.
And again, in closing, as always, I send you peace. I wish you love, and God bless you.
God
You
bless
take
you.
care. Bye-bye.